Hi chums, right, how I plant potatoes. This is something I get asked quite often, and if you want to see the other, how I've done it in previous years, if you look at my channel and type in how I plant potatoes in the search function, it'll bring up all my planting videos so you can compare and contrast if you wish. But I'm going to show you again for anybody new that wants to see, because somebody's going to ask me, or a whole lot of people are going to ask me, how do you plant your potatoes? What exactly do you do? So I'm going to show you. But I'm not going to use the fancy pots that Dan and myself and Chris and all have. I'm not going to use the black bags that myself and Dan used in the past and he still uses. I'm not going to use the fancy bags that I bought from Marshall Seeds in the potato growing kits. I'm going to go back to what I did at the very start whenever I first grew potatoes in a bag, just for a bit of an experiment to see would it work. And that is an old compost bag, and obviously it can be any compost bag, and this will work just as well as anything else. And I think that I wish I'd made better records years ago, but I think I did a better job with these bags here than I do with the smaller bags, the tubs and the other bags. But the reason that I use the tubs now is because they've got handles on them and they're easier to move and maneuver about, and they're also they don't hold as much soil compost, so they're not as heavy to move. These become quite heavy. Now what do we do? There's just one of them, and I put two bags together. Now this is exactly the same bag. There you are, Levingston's compost bag, but what I do is I put one inside the other. It's just for strength basically, and the reason I turn more of them inside out is because I want to know that this is a bag of spuds, that it's not a bag of compost that's been used or part used and end up pulling on the spuds out or something without too early in the season, you know. So there we are, that's in there now. We'll just get her down to the bottom. Right, so that's the first terribly difficult part of this whole process, and then the next comes. Right, so there's the two bags together, and we'll need drainage. So we get our knife out, and it's very simple. Just stab through the bag about 2 inches from the bottom, okay, and just make a few slits and that'll let the water out, okay. And I don't know how many, put in there 5 or 6, you know. You don't want to make too many or the ass will fall out of your bag. But that's both bags now have got holes in them. And as you can see, there's a hole there. There's a hole there, and there's a hole in the one behind it. There's it there. Alright, so now we know water can get out. Right, the next part. This bag's too big. Far too big. So the easiest thing to do is roll it down. So I just turn it over, and that is about maybe 2/3 the original size of the bag, or maybe about half or 2/3 or 3/5 or 4/7 or maybe 7/12, you know, whatever fraction you like, as long as you end up with a pot. And there's your pot ready for your potatoes to go in, okay? Right, just put my knife away before I stab myself. Okay, right, next rule I'm going to break is, in the last video I did, I told you that Which magazine said that you could use your compost up to 3 times. I never use my potato compost again because I'm scared of introducing some sort of a disease or some sort of fungus or bacteria. It's not very good for potatoes. There is this thing that you can't grow potatoes in the same ground. If you do it for more than 3 years or something, the ground goes sour and you can't grow them there for 7 years, a magical 7. But it doesn't matter if you do it in the bag. So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to use last year's compost. So this is compost from last year. It's not Levingston's. It could be Levingston's. It could be Vitax Q4, it could be B&Q Verve, it could be Westland General Purpose, it could be Murphy's is new this year, it could be anything, okay? So just basically throw some in there. Now how much do you put in? Count the handfuls, right? I've got very big hands, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll put it all in it. 5, okay? So there's 5 in. Can you see in there? You can. And what depth is that? It's just the length of that finger. So about 3 inches deep, I put that in. About 3 inches. Right, so we need potatoes now. And of course I have the whole thing set up with no potatoes here. Give me a second, the potatoes are sitting down here. Right, I'm coming. Right, now, these are my own Sarpo Mira from last year. I took those out a few weeks ago and left them sitting out in the sun here. They have no chits on them as such, worth talking about, but they're viable. There's wee chits coming on this now. So we put 3 potatoes in and just space them as best you can. It's not critical. So there's our 3 potatoes in. Oh no, sorry, I've forgotten a bit. Right, rewind. Right, let's rewind. The next part is, I'm doing this in all the potatoes. This compost has been used before, and even though I added Growmore and Bloodfish and Bone last year to it, I'm going to add more Bloodfish and Bone because it has, you see, compost, commercial compost, that little lid of compost is about 2 ounces. So 2 ounces of that compost, Bloodfish and Bone. So 2 ounces of Bloodfish and Bone. And this is the new miracle stuff that I learned from Dan this year. And Chris maybe doesn't approve of this, but whenever I get my £29,000 pot, I'll be happy enough. And there's 2 ounces of Spuds Galore. Spuds Galore is a fertilizer designed for potatoes, and it has a very high NPK. It's got 12, 11, 18 plus magnesium plus trace elements. So it's designed for potatoes, gives them the particular elements they need most. So there's, in there we've got 2 ounces of Bloodfish and Bone, 2 ounces of a general fertilizer. I'm using Spuds Galore, which is really designed for potatoes, but normally I'd use something like Growmore, but any fertilizer will do. So that's that. So that's it all mixed up, right? And then we can put our potatoes in. So we've got our Sarpo Mira here. There's a wee, to see at the bottom, there's a wee kind of a dried out, that's what was attached onto the plant. So that's your bottom. And the same here, there's the eyes are starting to come out, and there's a wee bit where it was attached onto the plant, so that one goes over there. And then this one here, oh look, it's a wee funny looking person. And you can see it was attached to the plant there, so there's the chits coming out there, so in that goes. So we've got about 3 inches of compost, and then on top of that I'll put another couple of inches. We'll see. It's arbitrary, you know. There's no rules here, you know. It's just near enough will do rightly. There's 3 big handfuls. What's that? That's about 2 inches, 2.5, 3 inches. I'll tell you what, I'll just put the same in again. There you go, that's about the same again. And there you are, 1 bag of spuds planted and rolled down, and I'll just keep them at that height. And that's about the same height as the other bags I'm using as well. So that'll do the job alright. The next thing you need is your label, which is sitting down below there, so we'll put that in later. But that's how I plant potatoes. In a plastic bag, just cut a couple of holes in the bottom, put in about 3 inches of compost, some Bloodfish and Bone, and some general fertilizer, or Spuds Galore is the one I'm using. And then put your spuds in and add another couple of inches, 3 inches of compost again, and just leave. I don't put water on them now. There's enough water in the potato to get them going. And that's them done. Somebody's going to say to me, what were you listening to on the radio? I like talk radio, and Irish talk radio is probably the best in the world, even though I'm from Ireland and all. As other guys have said, much more influential people than me have said, that the Irish just seem to be made for radio, and they do really good talk radio. And everybody that phones up a radio station in Ireland can talk, you know, so and talk well. So I listen to a lot of talk radio, and I listen to current affairs. Oh, the window closing. Current affairs and stuff. So and then later on in the music, I'll switch over to, in the afternoon, I'll switch over to Lynette Faye on Radio Ulster, and then I'll switch over to U105 tonight for Jerry Lang. U105.8, Jerry Lang, he does a brilliant show, and you can get it online. It's a super show. He does oldies, but what's really significant is he owned record shops in Bangor and Belfast, and he met all the superstars, but he's a very humble guy, and he tells you some really fantastic insights and background stories to the music, which is really wonderful and very entertaining. So I like listening to him. I've only discovered him about a year ago through my mate Paul. So that's what I'm at there. But there you are. That's how you plant spuds. 3 inches of compost in an old compost bag. Some grow more, some bloodfish and bones. Put the spuds in, top it up, and walk away after you put your label in, because you will not remember. There's only one person can remember stuff in pots, and that's it used to be called Jihad Acadian Pancho in Canada. So he's the only person I know who can remember everything he plants by putting a label in. He must have a phenomenal memory. So there you go, guys. Planting spuds in a bag is done, and I've used my own compost from last year. I'm going to do another video about that in a minute. Okay, all the best now. Bye bye.